Hello everybody, Professor Powers here, and this is your welcome video to your online microbiology lab. Now I know that this section up here says 15017, and you may be in a different section, but they're linked, but right now you're only seeing that particular course reference number. So much like I talked you through your online lecture Brightspace course, we're going to do that with the lab course. So again, there's a start here, and this start here is going to essentially have this video, and then it is going to have our online lab schedule, and then essentially a link to your Connect or your McGraw-Hill Connect lab. So here we go. So this looks familiar because it looks a lot like the syllabus or the schedule for your online lecture. So this is for the online lab. So you're going to see that you have some virtual labs. VL means virtual labs in McGraw-Hill Connect. And then sometimes we have essentially a lab assessment associated with the Smart Book. So it's also a McGraw-Hill product, but it's called the Smart Book. So occasionally you will have that. The reason why that's the case is that there are a few topics in microbiology that aren't represented in a virtual lab from McGraw-Hill. So instead of trying to find a different virtual lab from a different company like Pearson, instead there's very good information in the textbook. So we are using essentially some supplemental material from the textbook that's going to teach you that information. So that's what the Smart Book lab assessment is going to be. And there's also quizzes here and there throughout your course schedule. All right, so let's go back to this. So remember, week 1 is going to start on a Monday, but then thereafter, the following week opens up on a Friday, so you have that weekend plus the actual weekend that an assignment is due. So we see here for week 1, there is a virtual lab tutorial worth 1 point. There is the virtual lab and personal safety lab worth 2 points. Virtual lab safety, hand washing. So that's going to be worth 2 points. And then you have a quiz worth 5 points. So these are due Sunday, August the 30th. These lab quizzes are timed, but there is no lockdown browser or screen recording, okay? So don't have quite as much pressure of being viewed and proctored the entire time that you're taking the quiz. All right, let's take a look at week 2. Now you see there's lots of different topics here. And so it's super important that you keep up with all the things or all the virtual labs that are due that week. So again, I would print this lab course syllabus, and I maybe would print it, put it on my wall in my office, or put it in a 3-ring binder. And when you finish a lab and you got your points there, you can check it off and also write your points down, so you know for sure that you actually completed that virtual lab. Sometimes I hear from students, oh, I didn't see that lab, or oh, I missed that lab, or I skipped that lab. Okay, well, it's there. It's all been loaded into our microbiology online lab. It's also in the McGraw-Hill Connect portion that's linked to this lab. So it is there. What happens, I think, is that students get a little dizzy, which can happen. I get that in an online lab course where you have multiple virtual labs to do, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you're completing each one. Now, as I mentioned in your lecture video, essentially, if you miss one of these labs, it's worth 3 points. 3 points is not going to matter in the end. I already explained that. Please don't be reaching out for me to reopen any of these virtual labs. You need to do it and do it by the due date. You essentially have 7 days plus 3 more, 2 or 3 more. So you just have 9 or 10 days to do it. So you need to start early, keep track, be hyper organized, make sure you're completing each of those virtual labs. And then some of the labs will have a lab quiz. So there's a lab 1 quiz, a lab 3 quiz. Notice lab 2 doesn't have a quiz. Now, remember how I said up here, it says lab assessment associated with the Smart Book. So it says assessment. I think that was supposed to be assignment. But anyway, here's the lab assignment. It's microscope use. So there's a very good Smart Book assignment that will talk you through the microscope. And I thought that was a bit helpful along with the virtual lab on microscopy. So you're going to move through the week's lab materials. Now notice that you have the online lecture and the online lab, so you've got kind of this twofer thing going on. So it's super important to stay organized in the lecture and the lab. Now you will have 2 lab practicals. So lab practical 1 will cover labs 1 through 4. It's 50 points. You will have a lab practical 2, and it's down here, and it's also worth 50 points. Okay. And then it's going to cover all the labs since the last lab practical. So 1 through 4, lab practical 1, lab 6, 7, 8, 9 will be on lab practical 2. And then we kind of diverge from the lab practicals at that point, and you'll have some quizzes. So lab 12 quiz, lab 13, and so on. Okay. So it's super important to stay organized in lab. Let's go back and let's dive into week 1. This is our lab safety and introduction to the microbiology lab. Of course, you all are not coming to our actual microbiology lab. So we have to create an experience for you that's online that feels like you are coming to lab. So you'll have essentially a handout that's associated with each of your labs or each week of lab. And this is super important because this is like your study guide for lecture. This is your study guide for lab. Now, as you're doing the virtual labs, you can start spinning. It's a lot of information. It's kind of a lot of fun and games at times. Okay, you click on this, you click on that, you fill test tubes with stuff, and then you put some reagents in them, and then you look for a color change. But sometimes we can get lost in the fun and forget that we need to learn, and we need to cook down that information and have kind of a takeaway. So when you're studying for a lab practical, you know what the takeaway was for that particular lab. So this lab handout is going to help you with that, okay? So again, I'm a big fan of printing things because it's there. You can see it, touch it. You can flip through your notebook when you're studying. So there it is. And then here's the labs that will be on that particular lab handout, the tutorial, lab safety, including personal safety, lab safety, which is hand washing procedure, and then you have your quiz. So it says here you have 20 minutes to take the quiz. You can use your completed lab handout to take the quiz, and the questions are coming either directly from the handout or things that you would be able to answer if you understand the content on the handout. Okay, so don't be trying to fudge your way through it. Sometimes in a pinch, you may occasionally have a week where you did that, and I fully understand. But you don't want to have that kind of practice from week to week because that's not going to be the way to develop confidence in microbiology and be successful in the course. So you'll see that the weeks essentially are opening up the Friday before the actual week. When we have a break week, I still open it up on the Friday of the end of a week. And then essentially you have all a break if you want to get ahead. Okay, so you'll see that those things are going to be open a bit earlier than you might expect because there's a week off, but it's still going to be that same pattern. At the end of the week that you're working on a Friday, you're going to see the next one coming up. Okay, I don't know that I see anything else here. Oh, yeah, maybe so. How about we are going to go start here. And then I want to click on the McGraw-Hill Connect. So this is essentially those virtual labs. Again, you probably won't get to access this until the very first day of the actual fall semester, but it's here. I wanted to just show you what it looks like. And it is going to have all the same due dates. If you ever see a mistake where it doesn't look like these due dates jive with the lab syllabus, please let me know because I'm human. I can make mistakes. I try to triple check these things, but sometimes you get a little bit blurry in the eyes. But you just kind of move on through all the labs. I try to put them in the same order as the listing on the actual lab syllabus. But always, again, as I said, check off the lab once you've done it so you know that you've done it. Okay? I do believe that's all of my introduction. And I look forward to having you all in this online lab. I do want to put it out there that there is space in the face-to-face lab, which means I'm looking at my schedule. on Wednesday afternoons, 1:55 to 3:45 in Steuben Hall, room 105. So if you find that this virtual lab is not working for you, if it's the first week before you even started, or it's the end of the third week and you're just really not enjoying it, then I welcome you to join our face-to-face lab. So we would do a drop ad and make sure your points were transferred, you wouldn't be in any deficit, so that you can feel successful and confident in microbiology. So anyway, looking forward to working with each of you. Let me know your questions. Have a good day.